So, hey everyone, this is Dr. Tara. I am so excited to be back with Matt Prestbury. I'm so excited to have him back on with me. We are going live. Matt, thank you very much. Let me view this on Facebook. Um, so I'm going to switch this over so that we can see ourselves and we can see other people. Let me make sure. All right, there we go. And all right, we're going to start over. All right, hey everyone.
Uh-oh.
What? Hold on. All right, let me see if I can catch up. Okay, so everyone should be joining in. All right, we're having some people join on. I'm back with Matt Prestbury, who's going to be talking with us tonight about dads and depression. Matt, thank you so much for coming back.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. So for those people who didn't get a chance to see or didn't get a chance to stay tuned to the Facebook Live that we did on Tuesday, one of the reasons why this was so important to me was because when we think about mental health and understanding depression and mental health as it relates to stigmas or emotional wellness, men have often been left out of this conversation. And when I think about you and all of your work, for those of you who don't know Matt, don't worry, he will introduce you to himself very, very soon. He is a national speaker, advocate, activist, founder of the Black Fatherhood Foundation, Black Fathers Facebook group. But how I came to know you or came to know of you is through your very, very authentic and real truth about your own experience with depression and mental illness. And one of the things that was really touching to me is that, or how I kind of looked at it, is that you've really been a pioneer in this work. And a lot of times people are silent, especially men, or men aren't even included at the table. And why is it so important to you to have this platform or to use your platform in this way?
So I'm very happy to have this conversation, and I'm thankful for the opportunity. It's really important to me in large part because of my own experiences, starting with my two suicide attempts that I have made and my bout with severe depression. And also an event, and that happened with one of my sons that I haven't really talked about, and I don't want to go too much into it just for his privacy, and I don't really know how he feels about me discussing it. But mental illness has really touched us deeply, so it means a lot to me. And then also being the founder of this group and dealing with so many men, it's important because we deal with it a lot. There are a lot of fathers who are really in depressive states. So many fathers haven't seen their children in years. They don't have access to their children. They're fighting in court. And there's so many stressors and so many things that are working against them. And I know that a lot of them may not even realize that they're depressed. They may not realize that they have any mental issues going on, but you can see some signs of it, especially knowing it for myself and dealing with it firsthand. And then on top of that, being an educator and seeing a lot of things that not only my students, but students all over the country are really going through and dealing with in terms of bullying issues and things like that. My own son, my youngest son, has dealt with bullying on different occasions. And we've actually taken all of our sons, my wife and I, at some point in time to talk to a therapist for any length of time, but all of them have seen a therapist at least once, just because there's so many pressures that they're facing as kids growing up. It's just crazy. So I don't want people to have to suffer in silence, and I don't want people to have to feel like they're alone, because they're not. Like, I know for a fact I'm not alone, and I want everybody else to understand that they're not either.
And it's interesting because when you think about depression, especially depression, can be very isolating and make you feel like I am the only one who is going through this. And then when you pair that with stigma, right? So there's
Yes.
already a stigma in communities, especially in communities of color, but the stigma is even higher as it relates to men, men of color actually acknowledging their emotions. One of the things that I often say to men or to fathers when I'm doing groups is, as a child, you're learned that you can either be fine or you can be angry, right? You're not entitled to
Yes.
this whole spectrum of emotions. And so, but it doesn't mean that the emotions go anywhere, right? They just kind of manifest themselves in different ways or present themselves in different ways. And when you think about your own journey, what did you notice? How did you notice that, something is wrong, or this is manifesting in a way that's detrimental to me or not healthy to me and my family?
So for me, it fasted for a long time in just terms of feeling a lot of stress. I have starting to have anxiety attacks and things like that. And I also, just back to the stress, it was a lot from me. One thing that I mentioned before is that I hold in a lot of feelings because I'm a talker in some regards. If we're talking about education, I'll talk to you all day. If we're talking about fatherhood, I'll talk to you all day. But talking about feelings, especially when it's not just about I'm frustrated because of this, or I'm just mad because of this. But when you talk about feelings, like, I really didn't appreciate that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
somebody was disrespectful and I didn't appreciate that. It's not something that you just really sit and talk about, especially at work. I've always been one who held a lot of stuff in. When people weren't doing things right, I would not really want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that stuff builds up, and then it got to a point where I noticed that. So one, I got diagnosed with sleep apnea, severe sleep apnea. I
Mm-hmm.
also got diagnosed with high blood pressure,
Mm-hmm.
and I honestly feel like, and I know that it's possible that the sleep apnea brought on both the high blood pressure and the depression,
Mm-hmm.
because I know those three are all in a relationship together.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the key things that I really noticed was that sometimes it would go hand in hand, whereas my blood pressure would be elevated, and then I will also notice that I would start crying out of the blue. And I remember one time really vividly when I went to work, and I told my principal, and it's like, I just said, I'm crying and I don't even know why. This just feels
Mm-hmm.
so crazy. Like, I don't even know that anything happened specifically, but I was crying, and that was one of the things that really woke me up to this and made
Mm-hmm.
me start to think about what I was really dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the biggest thing. And then I would notice, like, anxiety attacks, like being late for things, and then also trying to make things happen, as we spoke about before. When I plan things for my wife
Mm-hmm.
and they fall through, it's devastating to me. So those sorts of things were just like, those are real red flags. Like,
Right.
something is wrong. You need to be finding out what's going on.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you talk about sleep apnea. One of the things that I think, just as a culture and as a society, we're on this, grind until you die tick, and
Oh
I'll
yeah.
sleep when I die, or the rest, rest is for the weak. We're on this whole thing where
Mm-hmm.
grinding and pushing ourselves to the point of exhaustion becomes almost like a competition, right? Like, you haven't slept in a day. Well, I haven't slept in 4 days, but
Right.
not seeing how it's linked to our physical health outcomes, not seeing how it's linked to our emotional health outcomes. I jokingly say, we're no different than babies. When babies don't get sleep, they get cranky. They don't want to be around anybody. We are the
Yeah.
same way, but we almost take it like a badge of honor. did you find that, just being a man, did you find that you had the pressure to just keep going? No time for a break, no time to share your emotions until it got literally to that point where you couldn't even control it happening.
I think it was definitely like no time when I really felt in terms of sharing my emotions. As far as the sleep piece goes, I'm a sleeper. I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
get my sleep. The problem was that I stopped breathing
Right.
33 times an hour in my sleep. That was the issue. It wasn't that I wasn't trying to sleep,
Mm-hmm.
but I was definitely trying. This whole team no sleep and all of that stuff, I don't buy into it because I understand just how important it is. And
Mm-hmm.
really the crazy thing is that when you find out that you have sleep apnea, then you start to think back on all of the things and all of the other issues like brain fog
Mm-hmm.
and memory lapses or a lack of consistent memory and all of those things. And you put it all together, all the dots start to connect, and it's all so interrelated. So that's why I never bought into that stuff. And yeah, I do a lot of things. I have, a lot on my plate. But the thing that I understand is I can't be any good to anybody else if I'm not good to myself. And
Mm-hmm.
I can't help anybody else live better if I'm dead.
Mm-hmm.
So I gotta, gotta jump in the gym. I need to be doing better with my physical health, that's for sure. But in terms of sleep, nah, buddy, I'm gonna get mine. That as somebody said, very wise woman once said, and this was at this time it was in relation to a school I was working in, and she said, if you die today or tomorrow, this place is going without you.
Mm-hmm.
You got to take care of yourself. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that goes to anything, whether it's a place, a business that you're working for somebody else, or even if you're self-employed and you working for yourself, it your business may not go on if you die,
Right.
but the world will go on without you,
Mm-hmm.
and will hardly skip a beat except for the few people who go to your funeral. So the
Mm-hmm.
thing is, we really have to do a better job of taking care of ourselves. You can do all of this work and you can stay up 24 hours and cram all of this stuff, but if you're mentally down and beating yourself up because you're not refueling and you're not doing the things that you need to do for your body, then eventually you're going to crash. It's like driving a car with dirty oil in it. You're not getting fresh oil, you're not getting fresh gas and putting it in your car. The same kind of thing. Eventually that car is going to break down on the highway. So you can push it all you want, but at some point it's going to crash on you.
Mm-hmm. When you think about, one of the things that I heard you mention before was just how that therapy is, it's it's not taboo in your household. Do you think
Right.
that your own experience dealing with depression has opened that door up to your entire family, where it's made you and your wife Kelly be more receptive to the varying emotions that your children may have?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We went through a pretty traumatic experience with my oldest son, and at that time, like, we didn't handle it in the best way. And we, of course, we cried over, we talked to him, we had him switch schools so he could be closer to me and those sorts of things. But even in the midst of that, we didn't start with therapy. That wasn't
Mm-hmm.
like the first thought. So this really came about after I really got to my lowest depths.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was more of the thought in terms of getting therapy. Now, prior to that, we had we had attempted to do family counseling because I was previously married, and my ex-wife is biological mom to my oldest two children.
Mm-hmm.
So we attempted to do family counseling just to help with the dynamic of
Right.
biological mom bringing her back in after she had really stepped away from the children and not been in their lives. So we did that, but as on the aspect of really one-on-one therapy for dealing with depression and anxiety and things like that, that really was more of a result of, and actually I know exactly what happened now that I think about it. I called David Miller,
Mm-hmm.
whom a lot of people know.
Another powerful guy. Yes.
I called David Miller, and I told him eventually, after, my wife found out, because as I said before, it wasn't, I didn't come out with it. What happened with the first attempt was my wife and I got into an argument. I started to slip my wrist,
Mm-hmm.
and I stopped because I had seen my son's face, and that image of his face is really what kept me from
Mm-hmm.
going full throttle and really ending it all. So, at some point my wife found out. I actually told a good friend who was a coworker at the time, and her mom is a pastor. So my wife and I, all in the same day, we ended up at Harbor Hospital talking to the pastor, who's my friend's mom.
Mm-hmm.
And she helped me out a lot. And then back to David Miller, I talked to him, and he recommended a particular therapist to me, who I went to see a couple times. So that really was the start for us in terms of therapy for mental health and our mental well-being after that, because he really put it in my ear and said, man, if you've gone this far, you really need to see somebody. And that's what it
Mm-hmm.
was.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that it took you going that far for you to actually see that, or see the importance of you releasing your emotions, and how you felt? Like, was that your breaking point up to then you just kept letting it slide or build up? What?
I do, because what I was dealing with was definitely holding a lot of things in,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt like not communicating well with my wife, and us having those sorts of issues. And it is something, because even now I think about it, and in terms of when we get in tough situations, sometimes it even comes back in my mind, and it's like, I don't know, maybe this is too much. Maybe if I wasn't here, I wouldn't have to deal with this,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
all of those sorts of things. So it's kind of like a combination of things. Definitely it had a lot to do with holding things in and not really expressing, and I think that's one of the great things about going to therapy, really, is being able to release. And that's something that I'm just really now starting to come to grips with, because I wasn't really for therapy, and I was thinking, like, oh my god, here we go again. They're just gonna make me write in a journal, and that
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing, like all of that. And that's honestly what somebody told me to do, like,
Mm-hmm.
just write it down in your journal, and so on and so forth. And I'm like, they can't really help me. But being able to release and being able to talk to somebody in the way that I really now can talk to my wife,
Mm-hmm.
has been tremendously helpful. And I think that's important for a lot of people, and especially as a man, because we do suppress so much,
Mm-hmm.
because we don't want to feel, quote unquote, like a punk,
Right.
or like, or even worse word that I
Mm-hmm.
won't use. But that's how a lot of us look at it. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to come around, and I'm feeling there's an evolution in fatherhood and manhood, where we are starting to feel more comfortable expressing ourselves, and just
Mm-hmm.
being able to say, look, I just didn't appreciate that. And it don't make
Right.
me a punk to say it,
Mm-hmm.
but I think you could have did that a better way. And I'm,
Mm-hmm.
I'm, I'm honestly in my feelings about it, because it's just something about that. And I shouldn't have to just put up with it just because I'm a man and you're a woman. And, it's supposed to be like that. Like, you can
Mm-hmm.
tell me all day, we need to talk, and you didn't like this and you didn't like that. So it should go both ways. I should be able to tell you how I'm feeling as well.
Because I did the training earlier today, and we were talking about parenting, and I was talking about, there's 6 universal emotions that we all have, regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of socioeconomic status. You know, they are joy, anger, fear, sadness, shame, and curiosity. And then we did an exercise where we broke the emotions down based on gender. It was with the school. And we were talking about, well, who's allowed to be happy? Like, what emotions are more geared towards boys? What emotions are geared towards female girls? And the one that really came up across the board is that anger is the one that solely really put on boys. And, you know, it's almost like, like you said, a movement to allow boys, men to experience any of these emotions. And when you were talking, it made me think about, you know, for a lot of men, this process of being vulnerable, of acknowledging that I have emotions, is an unlearning of everything that I've been taught. You know, the example that I gave when we were talking earlier was, you know, I'll have parents and you have a 3-year-old son and a 3-year-old daughter, and your daughter falls and it's like, oh, you okay, princess? Come here, let me kiss it. You know, and your son falls, he's 3 too, and you're like, walk it off, man up, toughen up, you know, and so how that really starts a pattern of teaching your children, oh, I'm not allowed to feel that, you know, and so when I feel that, it almost becomes like a shame or a guilt for me even having this emotion, right? And I know sometimes, you know, especially with mental health, you know, I feel certain emotions and I feel bad for feeling those emotions. And so just listening to you talk about what your own process has been was just allowing yourself to feel, you know, is very authentic and very liberating for other people too, because you giving yourself permission also gives people who are watching you and around you permission as well.
Absolutely, and that's the beauty of it, and that's why I really feel like it's important for me not to have a muzzle or a filter and
Mhm.
really be able to say how I feel, because I understand that the more I talk, the more other people feel comfortable talking about the subject.
Mhm.
Is definitely something that's been taboo in our communities and in the culture and such.
Mhm.
And just the more open and honest we are about it, the better off we are. Oftentimes, we treat mental illness like a tennis ball, and we really only want to deal with it when it's on our side of the court, and
Mhm.
we hit it away, and till it comes back to us, until the next person commits suicide or the next person does something we say is crazy and
Right.
that sort of thing. And if they're close to us, then we deal with it. Or even if they're not close to us and it's in the news, then everybody talks about, oh, mental health is real. And we get a lot of these things that are starting to sound very cliche, but it's like, in the meantime, what are you doing? If it's not in the news and it's not somebody in your family, what are you doing about it? So that's why I feel like, I don't want to say it's not like a crusade at this point, but I just feel very comfortable telling people that this is what I'm going through. And when I started putting stuff on Facebook, and I would say very explicitly, at first it was real implicit, like doing
Mhm.
writing poems and expressing how I'm feeling, but not being very explicit about the fact that I really at times wanted to end my life.
Mhm.
So when I told people what I dealt with and that I'm dealing with depression, severe depression, and things of that nature, more people said to me that they were going through the same thing. And I would have had no idea. A lot of people, I looked at a lot of people the same way they looked at me. They look at me like, oh, you met Prestbury, you got this and you
Right.
got that. How are you depressed? Come
Mhm.
on, you met Zuckerberg, you was on Steve Harvey, you did this and you did that. How are you depressed? But at the same time, I'm looking at them the same way, just because, not because I felt like they had too many things going on to be depressed or
Yeah.
anything like that, but it's just like I never saw it
Right.
because they never said it, they never expressed it. I was never there in any episode that they had or anything, so I had no idea. When I see them, they always look happy. They look, they're happy go lucky and smiling and everything like that. But
Mhm.
underneath, like, I know I got a very good friend who is had gone through a manic episode where she blacked out, but I would have had no idea had I not expressed to her that I was dealing with depression, she would not have then in turn told me she was going through the same thing. And then down the line, she told me about this episode that she went through. And we've just really stayed in touch with each other. And oftentimes, like, I'll text her, like, I'll just say, I'm going through. You know what I mean? And I just say that, and it helps. It's like, and one thing that I want to say is that everybody doesn't have to be a licensed therapist to be a therapist. I got people who I call, and I tell them all the time that, you know, they can bill me for their services because I'm on their imaginary couch, because I send them messages on Facebook when I'm just dealing with stuff, and they really are a therapist to me. And I had an acupuncturist who I love to death, and she was really a therapist to me. Before she would do the treatment, we would talk for 15, 20 minutes, and it was therapeutic to me, you know. So it doesn't have to be somebody who is a licensed clinician, or, you know, whatever the term is, but everybody, I think, should find somebody. And the other thing that's going on now is that men are really being intentional about the need to reach out to one another and stay connected to one another. So that is also a part of the evolution. That's a beautiful thing to see when you're around a group of men, as I was the other day. Lamar Shields had a pre-Father's Day brunch for a group of us. And he said something that I know I've heard him say before, David Miller said before, and other people. And it said, you should just call a brother, text a brother, and just say, hey, how are you?
Right.
And be sincere. And it's not just, what's up? And he said, what's up?
Right.
You know, it's like the Budweiser commercial. And we just going through that back and forth. And then it's like, okay, peace, see you later. No, it's like, really, how are you? Because everybody's not going to just call you. I know I wasn't calling people to say, oh, I feel like killing myself.
Right.
But everybody will say that, like, why you ain't call me, yo? Because I was ready to kill myself. What do I want to call you for? So you can tell me I need to live?
Right.
No. But in the times when I'm not ready to kill myself, it would be nice for somebody just to call and say, hey, Matt, what's happening? And one thing that I expressed at the brunch is that, and I know I'm not the only one that feels this, is that a lot of us, we have certain things going on, and people check on us for those things. And people tell us we need to live for those things.
Yes.
But my thing is, if I stop doing all this work tomorrow, who's then checking on me? People, when they see me, Matt, what you got going on? What's the fatherhood thing? What's this? What's that? And I'm like, do you know I wanted to kill myself yesterday? No. But you asking me, what's the fatherhood thing? Or this is Matt who met Steve Harvey. And so, no, this is just Matt from East Baltimore who has a heart and who breathes oxygen just like you do, and bleeds like you do, and has feelings like you do. And every now and then I want somebody just to show that they care for me, just for me, not for being Mr. Fatherhood and being this and being that. So, oh yeah, I'm about to really go there. But
No, I go, because one of the things that you said just resonated with me. You know, I have been very vocal. After I had my daughter, I went into severe postpartum depression. And it's funny because in people's well-meaning intentions, this is where we get into intention versus impact. Like, people have good intentions, but they still impact you in a negative way. They say to me, oh, but you have a PhD in clinical psychology. You know how to get through this. You know, I'm like, that doesn't mean anything. Right? Like, none of that stuff means anything when you're going through it. And actually, it can make you feel worse. Like, for a while, it made me feel worse. I should be, you know, able to pull myself out, or, you know, I have these children, like you said, and I want to be there. And I you know, the hardest thing for me, I'll never forget, was just getting my son to school on time, because getting out of the bed was a process. You know, one of the things that I always tell people about mental health is that you feel it before you even know what it is. And so for me, postpartum was very physically heavy. Like, it was like a weight, like everywhere. It's like, oh my gosh, if I can get up and get out of bed, I have done something. Right. And so, you know, I love how you said that. You know, when you are in a relationship with someone, the the good intentions can have a more detrimental impact. I know you're saying these things to assist, but they're not working because I've already said them to myself first, probably,
Right.
and it's not working. So you're just adding on to whatever doubt or shame or guilt or whatever else it is that I'm feeling.
Exactly. And that can be a difficult thing, because it's just like you said, people do have well-meaning intentions, but I think that is why so much work needs to be done,
Mm-hmm.
and not just when somebody it has killed themselves, or like I said, when it's really in the media and we're throwing all these things out there about mental health is real and we need to do this and we need to do that, but then when it goes away, we're on to the next thing, just as we always do. But the thing about it is there's a lot of learning that people have to do, and the thing that I say all the time is that even people with depression don't really understand depression.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that it can be difficult for somebody who doesn't have it to really have any clue as to what it is that we are going through, those of us who suffer with it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it there's an opportunity there where people can learn so that they don't come to you with those things that feel like more of a burden. Like
Right.
when I don't want to live for myself, don't tell me that I need to live for somebody else. I need to want to live for me first, because if
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to live for myself, it's a burden to tell me that I have to live for this person and live for that person. And I have so much work that I need to do for all of these people, which I don't have to do, but it's good that I do
Right.
it, but I don't have to do it. And you telling me that I need to be here to do it when I don't want to be here, that's not helpful to me. So we
Right.
need to understand that there's a big difference between wanting to help and saying things that actually do help, because
Mm-hmm.
just like you said, you can say things that actually hurt the person. You can say things that actually make the person feel much worse, even though you're really trying to make them feel better. And that's why I look at this almost as like a blessing in a way, because I have learned so much. And that's why I feel like it's my responsibility really to talk about it,
Mm-hmm.
because there's so many things that I have learned firsthand. And as difficult as it is to deal with, I kind of feel like God did it intentionally, because I can share so much with so many people and help them learn things that I wouldn't be able to do had I not experienced this firsthand.
Right.
You can't make this up. You can't just read about it in a book or a magazine and then go and tell people this is what it is. This
Right.
is something that you really have to experience for yourself. So now when people talk about the things that they're dealing with, I don't offer a whole lot of hollow phrases that
Mm-hmm.
just sound good. Pray about it and this and that. I really talk to them and work to get to the root of the problem and their triggers, because a lot of us have certain triggers and things that really set us off. And it's not to say we always know what it is, but I know some of mine. I
Mm-hmm.
definitely know. And I work to avoid them so that I don't get set off. So that's what's more important than saying something like, "Oh, suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem." But if I'm going through the same thing day in and day out and it
Mm-hmm.
feels endless to me, how can you tell me it's a temporary problem?
Right.
It does not feel temporary to me. And I will be pissed off if you insist that my problem is temporary when I feel this every single day and don't know how to make it stop.
Mm-hmm. I love that too. When you think about breaking it down and letting go of some of the cliches we have about mental
Yeah.
health, like too blessed to be stressed. Well, I'm blessed and stressed, right? Both of those things
Yes. How about
can,
that?
can coexist.
Yes.
Other things that I want to acknowledge too, Shamia Jackson put the number to NAMI on there, and NAMI has wonderful resources for people who are experiencing mental illness, but also people who are around them. So children of parents who are experiencing mental illness, partners of parents. And so I want to just
Mm.
shout them out too, because they provide wonderful resources and support and strategies too to support people. when you talk about your network now, like it's beautiful to hear you saying, I reached out to this person and, I was talking to my acupuncturist about this. What do you say to the brother out there, the guy out there, or the family out there that feels like I don't have anybody? How do you start building your network so you get off of this island that it feels like you're on sometimes? What did that look like for you?
Well, one of the major things was certainly therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to get in with a therapist and talk to them, I feel like if if you don't feel like you have anybody else you can talk to, I think therapy, finding a therapist that you're really compatible with and really feel comfortable with, I think that's hugely important. And I think it's also important, as I said, for us to be intentional about reaching out to one another so
Mm-hmm.
that we don't feel like we're alone. I think sometimes we have more resources than we realize. I think
Mm-hmm.
we have to really want to make the effort, but then a lot of times we also can be scared because, again, we go back to the stigma and all of that, and we don't know how it's going to be received. So
Mm-hmm.
that can be difficult. But I do know that there are groups. If you're on Facebook, there are different
Yeah.
groups that deal with anxiety and depression and mental illness. So that is one place to start where you can have people who are in a similar situation and can really understand what you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
Also, of course, in Black Fathers, there is definitely a sanctuary, I like to say, where people can feel safe to open up. I know I have on several instances. I've talked about my bout with depression and what I deal with, and I've gotten great responses from people I don't know from a can of paint, but a lot of them have gone through
Mm-hmm.
the same thing or are going through now. There's some people who have pushed past it,
Mm-hmm.
which is really encouraging to me because it gives me hope that I don't have to deal with this and be on meds for the rest of my life,
Mm-hmm.
because I never wanted to be on meds. It was really like a last resort,
Mm-hmm.
but the
Why
medication has
did you
definitely
Sharice
it's
described
definitely
the question? Yeah, what are your thoughts on medication?
I've really, it really, like I said, it really was a last resort, of sorts. I know there are other things that I need to be doing, again, getting in the gym, because I have heard that that does help out a lot if you're
Mm-hmm.
working out and getting that going. But as for right now, just being real with myself, that's not where I'm at with it. I'm not a gym rat by any
Mm-hmm.
means. I'm not running in there all the time to work out. So the meds, my wife was like, look, this is what we're gonna do, because I've talked about trying to do it naturally, and I always like, that's my first thing with everything. I don't care what it is. If it's a cold, if I feel like I got an ear infection, I don't want any antibiotics. I'm gonna look up natural cures. I'm putting garlic oil in my ears, and I'm doing all kinds of stuff to avoid taking prescriptions and all of that stuff. So I have looked up certainly a lot of things that are prescribed as natural treatments, but
Mm-hmm.
I just haven't executed on it. There's a definite difference between knowing and doing. So I can know what I need to be doing, but I haven't done it. So my wife was like, look, you can Google this all day long, but if you ain't putting it into action, I got something we're gonna put into action. So
Mm-hmm.
I gave you a chance. Now we're gonna do it my way. So the medicine, it has definitely helped and changed my life, because even I feel like there are certain things that happen, like just for example, Morgan's graduation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or when graduation comes around, period, but particularly Morgan, because I went there for a year, and I'm yet to graduate college. So
Mm-hmm.
that has always been a trigger for me, because when I see other people walking across the stage, it's a reminder of my failure, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is seeing people succeed in doing something that I have failed to do. So that it brings me down tremendously when I see that. Um, homecoming is one of my triggers, because just because of my nature in terms of not having a whole lot of close friendships and
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing, and not really having a real social life where I'm just going and I'm hanging out with folks and that sort of thing. If I'm out, it's generally because I'm doing something related to fatherhood, it's community, it's something of that nature. So it's not a lot of just going and shooting the what with
Right.
my homeboys and stuff like that. So seeing things like that are triggers, and when people are like, we've been friends for 30 years, 40 years, since kindergarten and all of that. That's one of the things, like, I don't have anything like that. So those sorts of things, I just really say that to say those have been traditionally triggers for me. But since I've been on the meds, I'm able to handle it differently. Whereas those things come around and I really just brush it off. But
Mm-hmm.
in the past, I would have been like really feeling down in the dumps.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely helped a lot so far.
Um, I love your ownership of your triggers. Um, because sometimes, so many times in relationships, people hear the phrase, "Well, that's just the way I am," or "That's
Yes.
just the way he is or she is," as an excuse to someone responding to triggers. And so, when we think about this work, it really does really lie on us acknowledging or doing a self-reflection and assessment about these are the things that set me off, that take me somewhere that I don't want to go. And
Yes.
also acknowledging too that I don't have to go there, right? Because when I say that's
Right.
the way I am, I'm giving myself a pass, to go there, whether it's
Yes.
turn into anger, anxiety, depression, whatever, or hurtful words that I'm saying to someone else. And so just your ownership of your triggers, shows your growth and your commitment to your process. When we think about this, man, I'm sorry, we have to get ready to wrap up, but I could talk to you
No
all
problem.
day, all week. But when you think about all that you've been through, being a father with depression, being a man first, then husband, then father, then advocate, all these roles and titles that fall behind your name, and you think about um, the men that are in your community or the men that look up to you. One of the things that I noticed just from Tuesday with the awful audio that we had, so many men were in the comments about, this is
Yes.
information and, giving their own experiences. And for that, I'm forever grateful. What three takeaways would you give to any guy that's listening right now that may be in a similar situation, or to any partner? One of the things that I know, one of the people that I've heard you mention throughout the conversation is your wife, Kelly, and the support that she's given you too. So what would be three takeaways for people who find themselves in a similar situation?
I think one, speaking of partner, if it's a partner or even if it's another family member or
Mhm.
whomever it is, I think we all need someone who is really in our corner and really willing to ride the wave with us. Is a lot of ups and downs, but it's very difficult to do it by yourself.
Yeah.
So it's very helpful to have a loved one that you can trust, and someone who is also willing to kind of put up with your stuff,
Hmm.
and maybe have to, honestly, as hard as it is to say, maybe have to suffer a little bit, because
Hmm.
it's almost kind of like getting beat up to a sense until you really figure out how to maneuver. And I think that's one of the biggest things, and that can be a hardship. But at the same time, I think those of us who are dealing and who can be suffering have to understand also, and we have to work to appreciate them for what they're providing for us.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think that's really important. And going back to what you said, and not just saying, well, this is how I am. I
Right.
know, like, sometimes I'll say to my wife, like, she'll say certain things, and sometimes it's like how she says it, and things can upset me, and I'll say to her, you know what I'm going through, and that sort of thing, but it doesn't excuse me it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't excuse me being an asshole. That's the thing. So
Right.
that's what it is. Sometimes they can suffer, but I think you have to understand, especially when you come out of it, I'll say,
Mm-hmm.
because we know how it is. You're up, you're down. You don't
Mm-hmm.
stay down forever. So you come out of it and you have to understand, if I've done something wrong, I have to make amends. I have to be accountable, and I can't just say, "Oh, well, I'm depressed, so screw it. I'm just going to be like this. I don't care what you think or
Mm-hmm.
how you feel." We really got to be accountable for our actions, even when we feel like we aren't necessarily physically in control of them. I encourage everybody to reach out for counseling, to seek a therapist, and if it comes down to it, and you gotta do the meds, then you may have to bite the bullet, so to speak, and do it. I promise you, it has helped me tremendously. But I know other people who have gone other routes.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever it is, I would say try and do whatever works best for you. That's what it's got to be. I know some people who self-medicate. I am one. I do that too, in addition to my prescription.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got to be what works for you, and you can't really worry about what other people think. I know some people frown upon that, upon cannabis use, whatever. But you have to really do what's best for you, and you have to allow yourself to feel your feels, and you have to allow yourself to be in the lows, but you also have to know that you can't stay in the lows forever. And that's something I got from my soul, who I call my soul friend, Erica Bridgeford.
Mm-hmm.
And she said,
Name
you
all these
can't.
powerful people. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I'm blessed to say so. I got some tremendous people in my life. And but she said you can't allow yourself to stay there.
Mm-hmm.
So you can be there. Nobody said you can't be there, because a lot of times you aren't in control of your
Right.
being there. As I said before, a lot of times I would have the silent screams and I would have the battles with myself, because it was really internal. And I would say, I feel like my brain is not my friend, because I was honestly feeling like I was in a battle. I was trying to be happy, and my brain was holding me down and saying, "Not today, partner." But
Mm-hmm.
after that goes, then you got to pick yourself back up, really, and you got to say, "Look, I'm gonna push forward, and I'm gonna make today a great day. Something might happen. It might push me back down, but I'm not gonna stay down forever."
Mm-hmm. And then I want to end with shouting out your group, because you have created a safe space, or let me back up, a space that provides safety and camaraderie and cohesion and acceptance for thousands of Black fathers. Like, if anybody is watching and wants to get connected to that network, I don't have anybody that I can touch, because maybe some people around me are toxic too, and
Mhm.
so, but I'm looking for that outlet. How can they be a part of that? And what will they get as a part of this group?
So I'll tell you what you get. There was a post that was just posted recently, and we are a closed group, so I
Mhm.
can't share the post directly.
Right.
But I will say that the brothers said to the effect of, "I've never seen anything like this, where so many Black men look out for each other. This
Wow.
is really new to me." And that,
Wow.
I mean,
Mhm.
like, what do you do with that? That just like
Right.
gave me chills, for real, because that's really something that was intentional. And
Mhm.
that's what we set out every day to maintain. And
Mhm.
that's really what it is. So for Black men, and even those who have yet to become fathers, we encourage you to join the group, because this is what we're about. And than just it's more than just even strictly fatherhood, although everything is related to what you do. If you're
Mhm.
not in a great mental space, it makes you hard to be the best father that you can
Mhm.
possibly be. So all of this stuff is interrelated. And we even started the Black Fathers Health and Wellness group, because there's so
Mhm.
many things that we wanted to touch on. So we created that as a whole separate group in and of itself, that
Mhm.
men can join and be a part of that. That's still for Black men only, but it's
Mhm.
with a um, very focused on
Mhm.
mental and physical health and well-being. But yes, join Black Fathers. And for those of you who aren't Black men, you can join Black Fathers in Company, which is a sister group and which is designed to really be a bridge to connect us, those who are in the private group, and connect us with those who cannot be, so everybody can still get a glimpse of what goes on in the private group, and more importantly, what goes on in our lives, so we can make those connections. I went to something yesterday with my wife, which was really like an orientation kind of for a cohort of future doulas. And someone talked about, we all introduced ourselves and everything, and someone talked about how great it was to see myself and my wife there together, and we're really on the same page. We're working together on the foundation and things like that. And it really dawned on me after that that Black Fathers and Company is really sort of a representation of that, whereas men and women both can be in that group, and we can combine our efforts, and really, even though it's still a focus on fatherhood, but it's a focus on fatherhood with the support of our sisters too.
All right, Matt.
Oh, and like the Black Fathers Foundation page on Facebook too.
Kelly has helped you out. All of it is in the comments. If anybody, she has Black Fathers Foundation, Black Fathers on Facebook, Black Fathers Foundation on Facebook and IG. So thank you, Kelly, for putting it in the comments so that people watch this and share this video, as I know that they will. More people will be connected to you too. Mark, I just want to acknowledge your comment. He talks about Devin Franklin, the pastor, talking about in his book, The Truth About Men. He calls it being trapped in the man box, everything that you were talking about earlier, and just acknowledging that and the strength that it took for you to step out of that. And, one of the things that I was saying to you when we were talking just amongst ourselves was my admiration of your unapologetic living in your truth, and how that truth opens up and creates the platform for so many people to do the same. And so I just want to thank you, Matt, for joining me today.
Thank you.
Shout out Kelly again. You can donate to this group, $20K for 2020. We want to help you all get there. I'm gonna hire her. I'm going to take you. I'm gonna hire you for me too. But just thank you, and to everybody who's watching, please share this, because I think that this is a necessary conversation.
It is. And if I could say one more thing, I don't mean to cut you off, but one thing that I've come to know is that, and again, I made this number up, but 95% of the people that we're hiding our stuff from, they're hiding stuff too. And that's why I feel so comfortable opening up. Just like I said, when I talk about it, people say, oh yeah, I'm dealing with that too. So many of us are hiding it because we're afraid of what other people are going to think. I was in shepherd prayer after I tried to kill myself the second time. And all I could think about was how the staff and what the staff thought about me. Did they think I was crazy? I just tried to end my life, and I'm worried about what they think about me, right? So that's what we deal with. A lot of times we worry about what this person thinks and that person thinks, but we don't know they hiding stuff too.
And the journey is getting into what we think, right? Because we've spent so much of our time focusing on what they think. We've lost sight of who we are, and our own truth, and our own vulnerability, and our own strength. Because, like you said, you will come out of this, and you'll learn there are so many parts of you that you haven't even met yet. And so when you allow, the social media you to take a backseat to the real you, that's when the healing comes, and that's when the joy comes. So thank you so much, Matt.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Oh my gosh. Yes. And for everybody who's watching, join me on Tuesday next week. We will be talking about dads and co-parenting. I will be bringing my ex-husband on to talk about that. So that's going to be fun. But as always, this is Dr. Tara. And, healing happens when it can happen in relationships. Matt, one of the things that you said is that you can't read your way out of this. You have to relationship your way out of this. And so to that, I want to encourage us all to heal together. So Matt, thank you again so much.
Peace. Thank you.
Good night.
Peace.